This is Gemara Metziah, Daf Ayin Tes. We concluded on the very top of Ayin Tes Amud Aleph, as we explained that the entire Brisa is all the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. And we said, Chasiri Mechzer Avachi Ketani, on the very bottom of Ayin Chesed and Beis, Serches Chamar Vevrika Nishtatis, Hare, excuse me, Omer Larisha Cholafanech. That was the critical ingredient that we added on. That was when what? However, excuse me, Aval if the animal is taken as he was going, then he could say, what do you want from me? I did nothing wrong. Shimon ben Elazar on the top of Ayin Tes Amud Aleph. Shehoyo Rav Shimon ben Elazar Aimer. Imiderech Ilucha Nala Harishal Cham. Aimer Loi Harishal Chalafanecha. Then he could say, your animal is in front of you. Vim Loi Chayiv Lahamaloi Chamar. Asks the Gemara on this pshat 4 lines down. Umi matiz mokmiz lakir of Shimon ben Elazar. V'hakatani, but we learn Reish Hasechus Chamar Vevrika. Oshnishtat that if the donkey became blind or the donkey became a shayit, V'ilu, so you're allowed to return the donkey. You did nothing wrong. The donkey becomes blind. The donkey loses his mind. Says the Brisa, so you return it. And yet, if you hired a donkey, rented a donkey to ride on it, and it becomes blind or it loses its mind, so Shimon Elazar is in direct arguing to the din in the Brisa. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Huna, Lerkaiv Aleho Shiny. To ride upon it is different. Meaning, where did Rav Shimon Elazar say you have to give him back? Is when you rented the animal to ride on it. However, our brisa wasn't where you rented the animal to ride on it. And the difference being that, says Rashi, that when the animal is being rented to ride upon it, and he said that specifically, therefore he's going to have to give him a new animal. The owner is going to have to give the renter a new animal. Why? I told you I need an animal to ride upon. The animal's blind. If the animal's going to start going crazy as I'm riding it, that's clearly not an animal to ride upon. Teretz number 1, and Amar Papa, based upon this. 1 second, our page just shrunk. There it is. Amar Papa, based upon this, Uklis Chuches. And if someone rents metal items, Kilirkov Aleho Dami is a similar case. What does it mean, glass items? So Rashi explains, if you rent something to transport glass items, that's a similar story. It's not going to work out so well if the animal's blind, if the animal isn't walking normally. I clearly told you I needed a donkey to transport delicate items. Therefore, you would have to give me a new donkey. Says the Gemara, and we start a new case. 12 lines down. First one line is Kilir Kaivaleh Dami. Omar Rabba Bar Rav Huna Omar Rav. Teaches Rabbi Rav Huna on the name of Rav. Again, I apologize. The Gemara keeps on shrinking on us today. The Gemara keeps on shrinking. I apologize. Okay, let's use a small Gemara if it's shrinking. Someone who rents a donkey to ride upon it, and halfway through the road, halfway through the journey, the animal dies. Says the Gemara. I apologize. I'm trying to mitigate this. Nice and nice charay. If it dies in the middle of the journey, so the one who rented it gives the owner the amount of money for hiring a donkey until that point. Meaning, that's all the animal did. That's all I have to pay you for. But the renter can't say anything more, even though he rented this donkey for a specific purpose, and the donkey drops dead in the middle. All the renter could do is has complaints. There's nothing more. No monetary claim can be made against the owner. Heichi dami. So says the Gemara, what precisely is this case? If it's normal, la gurei, if it's easy for him to find another animal, meaning I wasn't able to rent this animal and I'll be able to find a new one easily, then what? Tarumais, why do I even have tarumais? What was the big deal? I rented your animal, like just for example, let's envision, a taxi. So I hail a taxi to go, I don't know, across town, and halfway through, the taxi drops dead. The car breaks down, so I pay him for half the journey. I get out, flag down another cab, and I keep on going. So what's the tarumais that I even have against him? I need to but if it's not easy to get a new one, then I shouldn't have to pay him at all. He dropped me off in the middle of nowhere. I can't get a new taxi. I shouldn't have to pay him at all. So what is the case? So says the Gemara, really what's going on over here is and what's the reason I have to pay him for half? Because the owner could say, if you want to travel until here, would you not have to pay? Of course you would have had to. So pay me at least for half of the journey that at least I got you to here. Says the Gemara further, not so happy with this din of Rabbi Ravuna, the name of Rav. What's the case? If he said, I just want stam a chamor, then the owner should be obligated to provide a new chamor to replace the one that dropped dead in the middle. He has to get me to where I hired him to go. And he damer le chamor zeh, and the opposite. And if I said I want this donkey, so yikach. So then, if there is the value of the dead donkey, I could buy another animal. So I should sell it to the renter and then buy another animal, and I'll have an animal. I'll be able to complete wherever I'm trying to go. So why did Rava say pay him half and leave? What do you mean? I should be allowed to sell the donkey. Let's go back to our case of the taxi. I rented the car. I should be able to sell the dead car and then go rent a new car to keep on going on my journey. That the value of the carcass is not enough to rent a new animal. Says the Gemara, 1 second. But maybe there's enough to rent a new animal, not buy one. Then Yischar, you should be able to rent one. Says Gemara, that you're not able to consume the keren. Meaning, if I take the owner's animal, sell it, and use those proceeds just to rent a new animal, the owner's going to get nothing back, and that is not allowed. But says Rav, you cannot use the money to rent. But Shmuel says, Av lischar yischar. What exactly is this machlekes between Rav and Shmuel? B'mai komifliki. Explains the Gemara. Rav sarvela machalin and karnei. We don't create a situation that the keren of the animal is used up. Shmuel savar machalin and karnei. Shmuel says that's not our concern, and the keren of the animal can even be used up, and therefore, I'm able to rent an animal after I sell the dead carcass. Meisvei, ask the Gemara, 20 lines in the white lines. First one line is Meisvei. Yavei no nixas. Someone has a tree, and the tree was chopped down, or the tree died. Shneim asurim boy. The borrower, the lender of this tree, are usher to benefit from the tree. Kate said, yeah, so what should they do? You look boy karka, take the money, buy land with it, and the lender consumes the payers of the field until the end date. So Rashi over here, or the Rashbam, I should say, fills us in with the critical details that the case over here is that this tree was a mashkoin. So when Reuven lent Shimon $1 million, and as collateral for the loan, Shimon gives him a tree. That tree dies. So that tree was the way that Reuven knew he'd get paid back. Reuven's allowed to use the item. So what do we do now? Says the Gemara, buy new karka. And then Reuven utilizes that karka. Asks the Gemara, what happens at Yovel? When Yovel comes, lands, and you go back to the owner. And then what's going to happen? Everything's going to be used up. So ask the Gemara, according to Rav, that says we don't create a situation that the whole item is used up. Why over here would we yes buy a piece of land? Explains the Gemara. Dealing with a case in which the owner sells the land for 60 years. A special halacha, Yovel, of course, is 50 years. So if someone explicitly sells a piece of land for 60 years, it does not go back at Yovel. De Amar Rav Chisda Amar Rav Ketina Amar Rav Minayin Lamoicher Sodeu L'Shishim Shana She'enoi Chayzeres B'Yovel. A unique chiddush that you can counteract Yovel. Shenemar, the pasuk says, Arsal Timkar Litzmitzos, the land should not be sold forever, which means Mishein Sham Yovel, the land that without Yovel would remain forever. Nismatzes, then Sham Yisham Yovel, Eino Nismatzes, and with Yovel it would not. Then that's when Yovel works. Yotzazu Shavi Shein Sham Yovel Eino Nismatzes. Even without Yovel, it will not stay there forever. Why? Because he said 60 years. And therefore, you're allowed to purchase a land for 60 years, and Yovel does not go out, and that would be a case, seemingly, says the Gemara, that it's not Makali Karna. Says Gemara, what do you mean? So you got another 10 years, Lamara. But after 60 years, it's going to go back to Kali Karna, and then everything is used up. Ella says, you're right. Where are we dealing with? We're dealing with in an area or a time where there's no more Yovel. If that were to be the case, then he could cut up the dead tree into chips and use it for fuel. Why is he going to sell the tree, buy a land? If you're allowed to be Makali Karna, just use the dead wood, use the dead tree for something. For the fact that you don't do that shows us that we're saying it's not Mikalinan Karne. Says the Gemara in the last line, it's not a good raya. Imi Shamha, if that was your whole proof, look, Kasha, Zimnin Shalu, Zimnin, the Shalmu Shnei Mashkanta, Makmi Yovel, because there are times that the Mashkin might end before Yovel. Inami, or maybe the Matzleis Yuzil have money to repay the loan. Uparak La, Arbava Chamisha Shnein, Makmi Yovel. Therefore, that itself will not be a raya. Therefore, we could explain the Brisa according to Shmuel that you're able to Machali Karna or not, and it's not necessarily a kasha on Rav. Tanu Rabbanon continues the Gemara on the second wide law. Continuing the theme of items you borrow, items you rent, and there's an issue in the middle. Someone rents a boat. In the middle of the journey, transporting his items, the boat sinks. If you already paid, lo yitel. You can't get the money back. But if you didn't pay yet, it doesn't have to pay. Says Mar Hechidami. What's going on over here? If I said I want this boat, v'yayin stam, and I said I'm transporting stam wine, so if Nasan, if you already paid him, I lo yitel. Why can't he take again any money back? Name Alei Havli Svinta. Give me the boat so that I'm ready to bring wine. Since in such a case, the renter has a good taina. Meaning the renter, it's very good, the wine all sunk, but he says, I didn't say I'm renting it for this wine. I'm renting it for wine. So I have other wine that I want to transport. So he says to the owner, give me a new boat and I'll transfer my wine. So Ella says the Gemara in the last line, what must the case be? Bisfina stam, they're into the stam boat, but in the yayin zeh, and this wine. So now when it sinks, this wine is lost, and it was a stam boat, so I can't get anything back. It says Gemara in Lanasan, but then the price is said if he didn't pay, he doesn't have to pay as we turn over to Ayin Testament base. Why? Namely, let the owner say, the owner should be able to taina. What do you mean you have to pay me? You know why? Because if not, I'm ready to transport. Bring the wine. You said yayin zu. That's your problem. So you should have to pay me for it. Amar Papa. And of course, the difficulty over here is that it's a very unique middle ground. If you paid, you don't get it back. If you didn't pay yet, then you don't have to pay. So Amar Papa on the third line of Ayin Testament base, Bisvint Azu, the Yayin Zed. That both of them were these specific items. That's the reason why Avosvina Stam, the Yayin Stam. Then indeed, Cholk and Lach would be they would split the case. Continues the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanon, on the fourth line down. HaSecherez HaSfina Zon rents a boat, Ubar Kula B'chatzi HaDerech, and unloads it in middle of the journey. Noislis Char Shel Chatzi HaDerech, Ve'en Lo Yolav Ela Tarumais. The owner in the middle of the road says, Kol Tov, that's it, I'm dropping you off over here, get out. What do you mean? I hired you to get to that place. I'm sorry. The guy has to pay for half the journey, and he could only have complaints. Says the Gemara, what's the case? Elim to come Guri can rent another boat on my list. This is mamish like the case we started off the day. And if you can't rent it, Kuli agree by the Shalmi should have to pay. And he cannot find another person. Again, I said the case backwards. We're talking about that the renter jumped ship in middle, not that not that the driver threw him out of the cab. I hired you to drive me. And then in the middle of the road, he said, you know what? I'm going to get out over here. It was a $100 journey. Here's $50. And I'm leaving. So says the Gemara, 1 second, if he's not able to find another passenger, I should have to pay the whole thing. Says the Gemara, la'ilam t'kamishkach la'agure. Says the Gemara, really, t'kamishkach la'agure. Really, you could rent the driver could find someone else. Ella mayis leitarumai. So why could he have complaints? Misham rafsasa disfinte. He have complaints for a different reason. It weakens the boat. Loading, unloading, each time the passenger gets on and off, the goods get on and off, it cheapens the boat a little bit, so he has tarumais. Says more, 1 second, he has a good taina. It's weakening my boat. Elamai, says the Gemara, parka. What does it mean when it says that he unloaded it? The parka letune bigave. It means he unloaded it and he put it into the boat to go back in. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Really, we thought originally that I rented the boat stam. Rather, the Gemara now is explaining that I told you I could put as much as I want. And therefore, in the middle of the road, I decided I'm going to add on another package. Says the Gemara, so then what's the problem? So what's he complaining about? If I rented it and I said I could add it on, so middle of the road, I said, hey, we're picking up another person, putting in another bag. Why are you complaining? Says the Gemara, Mishum Shinui Daita. Because you changed your mind, you say you're off the extra rope to tie up everything. Meaning, we did find the case that you're right. In reality, you have the right to do it. We spoke how that you could do it. But Lamaisa, you changed your mind. Lamaisa, it's annoying. That's why it's a case in which he has tarumais. There's no monetary claim. Tarumais. Tanu Rabbanan. Smack in the middle of the Gemara. First 2 words of the line is Tanu Rabbanan. Ha-soicher es chamar likrav allowed to ride on it. Soicher meniach aleg susai. The renter can put his clothing on the donkey. V'liganoisai. His cup, and food for the journey. More than that, more than the clothing and the food for the journey, the donkey driver could say, no, I'm not letting you put it on. The donkey driver, what is he allowed to carry? The barley and the straw for the animal, and food for that day. So we have, obviously, a partnership. Me and you, I'm renting you to drive me on your donkey. So what am I allowed to bring on the donkey? What are you allowed to bring on the donkey? I'm allowed to bring my clothing and provisions for the journey. You're allowed to bring food for the animal and provisions for the journey. Says the Gemara, what's the case? If it's easy to get food for the animal food for yourself along the road. Chamar nami la'akif. The donkey driver could say, no, you can't bring that on my donkey. We'll stop on the road and you'll pick up a sandwich for yourself. And if it's not, if there's nothing to buy on the road, then the seicher can't prevent him. So why did it say that the renter is allowed to put on for the whole journey and the owner only for one day? Let's just highlight that issue. Go back into the Bryce and you see that the seicher can put it on shal oisa derech, whereas the chamar, the driver, can only put out oisa yoim. So what's going on? Meaning, if there's food to be bought, they both have to buy it after one day. If there's no food to be bought, they both should be able to bring on enough stuff for the whole journey. Amar Rav Papa, 10 lines on the bottom, explains, deshchiach lemitrach ulemizvan meunya leunya. There are stuff to be bought from inn to inn. So chamar, the driver, darki lemitrach lemizvan. That's the derech to trouble himself and buy it. Seicher lav. The renter, that's not the derech for him at each stop on the road, at the inn, to start handling and buying more food, and therefore we allow him to take for the whole journey. And one more din, says the Gemara, 8 lines to the bottom, Tanu Rabbanon, Aseicher is chamar, so rents a donkey, ler kaiva leom, to ride upon it ish for a man. Lo tirgav isha, now that have a woman riding upon it. Isha, but if you rented it for a woman, you're ish, you let have a man riding it. The Isha being Gdola being Ketana, and when it comes to the woman riding on the donkey, he could put a Gdola or a Ketana, Filu Muberes, Filu Minekes. Hasha Minekes Amred, Muberes, Mibai, says the Gemara, if you could even put on a Minekes, which includes the baby. What is a Minekes? A woman that is nursing, obviously the baby's with her, certainly a Muberes. Amar Abba Muberes v'hime nika ka amar. So it's an extra person. Amar Abai Shamina Beinsam Benisa Karsa Tikla Manafkimina Lemekachum Memkar. We find from here Benisa Karsa Tikla, according to the size of the belly, is the weight of the fish. The greater the belly, the heavier the fish. Meaning that's why it's a chiddush that the Muberes is allowed to come also on the donkey, even though she has the extra weight of the baby inside of her. Says Gemara, what's the chilek? The mekachum emker. When you're buying a fish, you have to know how much to charge. We'll pick it up from the Mishnah on Daf Pei, B'siyata Dishmaya.